Hi there, I'm Terry Butler from Mama Said So with a tutorial on finishing your quilt with a facing instead of a binding. I'm going to get this quilt trimmed up and we'll go through the steps to achieve a clean look without the need for a traditional binding. Let's dive in and get this quilt finished. Okay, step one, start out by cutting fabric strips, and I like to cut them 4 inches wide by width of fabric, and you're going to need to cut enough so that each facing that you make is going to be 6 inches shorter than the length of each side of your quilt. So what I do to get the most out of my fabric, I cut width of fabric strips and stitch them together and to make one long strip, and then cut them to the size I need as I go. So the next step after cutting your strips, you're going to fold them in half and press them so they end up being 2 inches wide. And then we're going to go ahead and measure for each side. Now my quilt is square, so all of my strips will be the same, but you're going to just have to measure and know that on each side, for example, if your quilt is rectangle shape, probably the top and the bottom are going to be a different length than the sides. So just cut them 6 inches shorter than the total length. The next thing you're going to do is cut squares. I like to cut an 8-inch square, but I don't think I have enough fabric this time. So I'm going to cut a 7-inch square and fold them in half diagonally to make a triangle. And we'll be back with the next step. Okay, now I've got my little corner pieces just basted across the 2 sides, and the folded edge of the square, now a triangle, is just like this. Now I'm going to take my facing strips. I've already cut them to 6 inches shorter than the whole length of my quilt. So from 3 inches down, I'm going to just start just clipping those. You don't have to go crazy with the clips. A clip here or there will do. And just make sure you don't stretch anything. It just needs to lay nice and flat. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to clip those down. I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. And then I'm going to stitch it, starting right here with, well actually I'm going to start at the corner. I'm going to start with a 3/8 inch seam. So this basting will be totally covered up, but it's secure and in place. So we're going to start right at the top and do a 3/8 inch seam all the way down to the bottom and continue around on all 4 sides. And then we'll be back for the next step. Okay, here we are with our little triangle underneath and our facing strips on top, and I'm going to stitch 3/8 of an inch along here all the way around the quilt and come back to here. And I'm straddling my camera, so this may be a bit awkward. But here we go, and this is a 3/8 inch seam. It's a little wider than we're normally used to stitching with, but I'm going to just stitch right along here and take out my clips as I go. Okay, this is about all I can bear, straddling this camera. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you can imagine. I will be back when we're all the way around and I'll show you how we're going to understitch this. Okay, so we've stitched our facing all the way around the edge, 3/8 of an inch. Put our little triangle on first, and now I like to just give this little press to press the seam allowance toward the facing. Give it a little press like this, and go all the way around. All the way around, and then what we're going to do is come back and do a little understitching. So what that means is we're going to be stitching about 1/4 of an inch away from the seam and stitch right down here so that the seam allowance stays on the facing, and that way when it gets turned back it really rolls toward the back, and these corners are going to get trimmed just right off the edge and turned, but not until after it's all the way understitched. So we'll poke that corner out real nice, but this is what it's going to end up looking like when it's all done. So I'm going to go do that and then come back and give you a peek. Okay, here we are. We're ready to do our little understitching. I'm going to just start right there, and I'm going to run it right along the edge of my foot. Okay, I've understitched all the way around, ended up here, and now I'm just going to trim off a little bit of the corner. Don't cut it too close. It doesn't really matter. And I do kind of like to give it another little bit of a press. But this is how the magic really happens. I just fold those in, tuck it, and use a nice sharp thing. I use this little tool by Alex Anderson, and get that pointed out as nice as you can. And then when I flip it over like this, everything lays nice and flat. And then I just make sure this is rolled out really good. Press it down like this. Get that rolled out real nice. That is it, gang. It's really nice. All the edges got nice and tucked in. There's nothing too bulky up in the corner. You can see that corner is nice and sharp. And then I just go around and I just do a little slip stitch. I do slip stitch from here to here, and then I just slip stitch the straight edges. You can pin them down, but I find that when this is 4 inches and then folded in half and after seam allowance, I can get a hold of it really well. And yeah, so that's it. Now you can make beautiful facings on your quilt too. Take care, everybody. Happy stitching. Well, that's it, gang. Pretty easy, right? All I had left to do was slip stitch the edge of the facing onto the back of the quilt, and it's ready to go. So I hope you really consider putting a facing on the back of your quilts rather than a binding on the edge. Until then, happy stitching, everybody.